I was just about to crawl into bed when I heard a soft knock at my door. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Who knocks at this hour, right? Midnight. Pitch black outside. My heart started racing before I even got up. Something about the sound felt off. Hesitant, I peeked through the peephole, and my stomach dropped. There she was, standing there in the dim glow of the porch light, her hair damp and plastered to her face, her eyes wide like she'd seen something no one should ever see. She looked like she'd run 100 miles, and yet somehow managed to get here, to my door. And then she said it. I can't go home tonight. Her voice was almost a whisper, trembling, but there was an urgency behind it that sent a chill down my spine. I didn't know her well, barely knew her at all, in fact, but something about the way she looked made me feel like the world had just tilted off its axis. There was fear in her eyes, real, bone-deep fear. And right then, I realized this wasn't just a random visitor or a simple favor. Something was very, very wrong. I opened the door, trying to mask my nerves, but my hands shook anyway. She stepped in before I could stop her, dragging in a chill that seemed to follow her like a shadow. I noticed the scratches on her arms, the torn sleeve of her jacket, and the dirt smudges across her face. She wasn't just scared, she'd been running. And whatever she was running from, it had followed her here. Who did this? I managed to say, my voice catching. She didn't answer at first. She just sank onto the couch, hugging her knees to her chest, and shook her head. I wanted to press her for answers, but something told me I needed to be careful. Whatever had happened out there, it wasn't something she could explain easily, or maybe she couldn't explain at all. All I knew was that my quiet night, the one I'd been looking forward to after a long week, had just vanished. In its place was a storm of questions and fear. And that's when I realized I had no idea what I was about to get myself into. I offered her some water, thinking that would calm her down, but even the small, mundane act felt strange, like we were two strangers caught in something far bigger than either of us. I could see the tremor in her hands, the way her eyes darted to the window, like she expected someone, or something, to appear out of the shadows. And in that moment, I understood one terrifying truth. She hadn't just come to my door by chance. She had come to me, for a reason. But before I could even ask her what was happening, there was a sound behind us. A creak, a whisper of movement that didn't belong. And suddenly, I wasn't sure if keeping her safe was even possible. Her name was Emily. I'd met her a few weeks ago at the cafe down the street. She had this quiet, unassuming presence, the kind of person you barely notice at first but somehow remember. We'd exchanged small talk, shared a few laughs, and that was it. I never imagined she'd end up on my couch at midnight, shaking like she'd run through hell. Emily didn't have many friends in town. She'd moved here recently, started a new job at a small bookstore, and mostly kept to herself. I knew she had family, but she rarely mentioned them. Something in her eyes that night hinted she was hiding more than just her personal life. Like a piece of her world had gone dark, and I was the first person she trusted enough to knock on the door. I tried to get her to talk. "You can tell me anything," I said, but she just shook her head again. Her eyes darted to the window, the corners of her lips trembling. There was a weight on her that went beyond exhaustion, something pressing in on her from every side. As she finally spoke, her voice came out in fragments, barely more than a whisper. "It started a few nights ago. Someone's been following me. I thought I could shake them, but I can't." She looked at me, and I could see the fight or flight instinct in her. The fear was raw, unpolished, and utterly real. I wanted to help her. My brain screamed to call the police, to lock the doors, to do everything I could to protect her. But something didn't sit right. There was a certain hesitation in her, a reluctance to fully explain, like she was protecting me from something, or maybe protecting herself from saying it out loud. We sat in silence for a few moments, broken only by the faint hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak from the old floorboards. Outside, the wind rattled the window panes, and shadows from the streetlights shifted across the room. My mind raced through every possible scenario: robbery, stalker, ex-boyfriend, but none of it fully explained the terror etched into her face. I asked about her home, her family, anything that could help me understand why she couldn't go back tonight. She just swallowed hard and whispered, They can't know I'm here. Not yet." The words hit me like a punch I didn't see coming. They can't know. Who were they? And why was I suddenly part of this? Even though I didn't fully understand, I felt a responsibility to keep her safe. But the more I tried to piece it together, the more tangled the story became. Something about the way she flinched at every sound, the way her gaze kept flicking to the hallway and the dark corners of the room, told me that whatever was coming wasn't just outside. It was closer than we realized. I couldn't sleep, couldn't think straight, and couldn't turn away. Because deep down, I knew that tonight wasn't just a random crisis. It was the beginning of something that would pull both of us into a storm far bigger than either of us had imagined. And then, just as I started to feel a little more in control, the lights flickered. The night felt heavier after that flicker. Every shadow in the room seemed to stretch and shift, like it was watching us. Emily pressed herself into the corner of the couch, hugging her knees tighter, her eyes wide as if she expected someone to appear through the walls. I tried to calm her, but my own pulse was racing. My mind kept looping through possibilities: a stalker, a thief, someone from her past. But nothing fully explained the way she trembled, the way her gaze never stayed in one place. She was terrified of something I couldn't see yet. I need to explain, she finally said, voice cracking. But I don't know if I can. She swallowed hard, and I could hear the catch in her throat. They'll know if I tell anyone. I felt a chill run down my spine. They? Who were they? And why were they powerful enough to make her so scared, so desperate to hide? I wanted to ask more, to press her, but I hesitated. Something in her expression said she wasn't lying. She wasn't exaggerating. She was genuinely scared, and I had no idea how far this fear stretched. Then came the knock. Not at the door, not at the window, but inside the apartment. A soft, deliberate thump from the hallway outside the living room. Emily froze, her eyes locking on the hallway like it was the doorway to hell itself. Don't go out there, she whispered. My stomach dropped, a knot twisting tight. I wanted to convince her it was nothing, maybe just the old building settling. But the way her body shook made me realize she didn't think it was nothing. We were caught in that silence for what felt like forever. Every creak of the floorboards, every faint sound from the street, became amplified in the quiet room. The air itself seemed heavy, pressing down, making it hard to breathe. I wanted to ask questions, but each word caught in my throat, because I didn't know what truth would even make sense here. And then, just when I thought I might finally get her to tell me everything, a shadow moved past the hallway edge. Not a person, not fully. Something blurred and dark, slipping in and out of the faint light. Emily let out a small, terrified gasp, and in that moment, I realized one terrifying truth. Whatever had driven her to my door, it wasn't outside. It was already inside, watching, waiting. The shadow didn't move like a person. It glided, or maybe I just wanted it to glide, past the hallway, lingering near the edge of the dim light. My chest tightened as fear clawed up my throat. Emily pressed herself further into the couch, silent but trembling, as if her life depended on me staying still. I reached for the lamp on the side table, hoping the small circle of light would give us some control, some safety. But the moment I flipped the switch, the bulb flickered and died. Darkness swallowed the room again, thicker this time, heavier. The silence that followed wasn't comforting. It was oppressive, like the air itself had turned against us. Emily's voice broke the quiet, barely above a whisper. They know they always know. Her hands shook as she clutched the blanket around her shoulders. I wanted to ask who they were, what they wanted, but the words stuck in my throat. Something in the way she said it made me feel like speaking could make it worse. We could hear it then, a soft scrape, like nails on wood, coming from the hallway, slow and deliberate. My heart thudded so loud I thought she could hear it. My brain screamed to run, to lock the door, to call for help, but the fear in her eyes froze me. Whatever was out there, she wasn't just scared for herself. She was terrified for both of us. I grabbed her hand, trying to offer some small measure of comfort. We'll be okay, I said, though my voice betrayed me. I didn't even believe it. Then came a whisper, just one, so faint I thought I imagined it. But Emily reacted immediately, jerking backward, her nails digging into my palm. No, don't let them in, she hissed, almost pleading. My stomach twisted. I couldn't tell if she meant physically or if she was warning me not to let some secret slip, some truth that could call them here. I glanced toward the hallway, straining in the darkness. The shadow shifted again, slower this time, deliberate, almost taunting. Every instinct screamed at me to bolt, but I couldn't leave her. and she couldn't face this alone. Minutes, or maybe hours, passed. I don't know. Time didn't exist in that heavy, suffocating darkness. The only thing I could feel was her trembling, the weight of whatever hunted her pressing against my chest. Then, without warning, the front door creaked open on its own. Not slowly, not as if the wind had nudged it. It swung wide, heavy, deliberately. The air changed instantly. Cold, sharp, almost metallic. The room seemed smaller, the shadows longer, the danger closer. Emily's eyes went wide. She whispered my name, barely audible, shaking her head. You have to see this," she said. Her voice trembled, fear and urgency tangled together like a live wire. I stepped closer, my hand tightening around hers. Whatever was out there, whatever had followed her to my door, it was time to face it. But I wasn't ready for what I was about to discover. And then she pointed. I followed Emily's trembling finger toward the hallway, my heart hammering. And that's when I saw it. Not a person, not a shadow, but something impossibly real. There, scribbled across the walls in what looked like hurried, jagged handwriting, were messages. My name, my address, my apartment. Every word dripped with a kind of malice that made my stomach twist. Emily's eyes filled with tears. "It's not just me, they've been watching you too." My blood ran cold. Watching her, protecting her, thinking I was safe. I wasn't. I'd been dragged into this from the moment she knocked. Whoever, or whatever, was after her had already marked me, already knew me. And then, from the darkness behind us, came a soft, deliberate chuckle. Low, slow, chilling. Not human. Not entirely. It echoed off the walls, wrapping around us, suffocating. I realized in that moment, this wasn't about Emily alone. This wasn't about a single night of fear. Whatever had followed her to my door had plans, and I was now part of them. The hallway seemed to stretch on forever, dark and suffocating. I could feel the air pressing in, heavy with something unseen, watching, waiting. Emily clutched my arm like her life depended on it, which, I realized, it did. "We have to get out," I whispered, trying to sound braver than I felt. But even as I spoke, I knew the front door wasn't an option. The chill in the room deepened, wrapping around us like icy fingers. Then it moved. Not a shadow this time. A figure emerged, tall, faceless in the darkness, its presence radiating a cold, unbearable weight. Emily screamed and fell to her knees, her hands covering her face. I froze for a split second, but then instinct took over. I grabbed her and pulled her toward the kitchen, trying to put anything between us and it. It followed, silent, unstoppable. Every step we took felt heavier than the last, like wading through thick fog. My chest burned, my heart felt like it would explode. And just as it reached the doorway, Emily turned to me, eyes wide with terror, and whispered a name I didn't recognize. The figure paused, and then the impossible happened. It recoiled, almost humanly, as if that name carried power. A flash of light, sudden, blinding, erased the darkness, and the figure vanished, leaving only the echo of a whisper. "You cannot hide forever." We collapsed onto the floor, gasping, trembling, soaked in cold sweat. For a moment, it seemed over. Safe. But as I glanced at Emily, her face pale and haunted, she said something that made my blood run cold. "They know both of us now. And this isn't over." I realized then that everything we had gone through, the fear, the shadows, the stalking, was only the beginning. What had come for her, and now for me, was far bigger, far older, and far more relentless than we could have imagined. And from the dark corner of the room, something stirred again. We didn't sleep that night. We stayed on the couch, side by side, watching every shadow, listening for every whisper. Emily refused to go home, and I knew I couldn't let her. Not yet. Not while whatever had followed her still lurked somewhere out there. As the first hints of dawn crept through the blinds, I finally got her to talk, really talk. She told me about the nights she had run, the people, or forces she could never name aloud, and the reason she had come to me. She trusted me because I had no connection to them, no reason to betray her. Somehow, that made her safe. And somehow, it made me part of this nightmare she had been carrying alone. By mid-morning, the sun filled the room with a warm glow. Shadows retreated. For the first time in hours, we both breathed a little easier. The threat hadn't gone away, but in the light, it felt manageable. Like darkness loses some of its power when seen clearly. We made a plan. Emily would stay with me until she could figure out her next move. I promised her she wasn't alone anymore. Not just in the immediate sense, but in the bigger sense, someone would finally fight alongside her. There was a quiet comfort in that, a fragile sense of hope. Even as we shared that moment, I realized something important. Fear can be crushing, but it also teaches you who truly matters, who stands with you when everything else has fallen away. Emily and I hadn't been friends for long, but now we were bound in a way that no ordinary friendship could define. Shared terror has a way of carving unbreakable ties. I thought I had a sense of closure as she finally rested her head on my shoulder. The room was quiet, sunlit, safe for the first time. And yet, as I turned to glance at the hallway, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. A faint shadow lingered where there shouldn't have been one. Not moving, just waiting. Emily noticed it too. Our eyes met, unspoken understanding passing between us. Whatever we had faced tonight, whatever had hunted her, and now haunted me, wasn't gone. It was patient. I watched it. But for the first time, I realized something else. We were ready for it. Together. And maybe, just maybe, that made all the difference. Even as the shadow remained, I felt a strange calm. Fear no longer had the same hold over us. Whatever came next, we would face it, side by side. And somehow, in the midst of terror, that knowledge was more powerful than any darkness. The world outside continued on as if nothing had happened, but we knew better. And in that quiet, uneasy peace, I understood something I would never forget. Sometimes, the people who knock on your door at midnight don't just need help. They change your life forever. And that thought lingered, long after the sunlight chased the shadows away.